Okay, so yeah, thank you very much for the presentation. I am Iñaki García, or Ignacio García. I am the technical director of the CANNA Foundation Laboratory. And well, for the people that don't know us, I can say that the CANNA Foundation is a non-profit organization that is based in its activity is based in two groups. Okay, the first group is the education part, where we develop some kind of videos, interviews, everything about the research and the findings in the about cannabis, always in a scientific or from a scientific point of view, and we try to explain these results or these scientific results in a very common language that everybody can understand. This technical information that sometimes is difficult to understand for someone that doesn't have the knowledge, okay? And the second part is the laboratory, where we perform some kind of testing. We test several cannabis-based products for cannabinoids, terpenes, and other contaminants, okay? So in this presentation, what I am going to talk about is about the classification of the cannabis plants based on their terpene profile, okay? But I can say it more simple. I can say that with this, or I am going to explain how we can manage the information that a terpene profile of a cannabis plant gives to us. Everybody knows about the report of cannabinoids when you receive a COA of a testing of some cannabis product for cannabinoids. Everybody knows if the plant or the product has high THC levels or low CBD, or high CBD, low THC, so people can interpret, can know the effect, or can makes an idea about the effect that this plant or this product can produce in the human body when the consumer takes it, okay? You know, if it is high in THC, so everybody knows that, well, it has some kind of properties that you are going to get high, blah, blah, blah. And if it is high in CBD, it has other properties. But what we can do with the terpene profile, what we can do with the information that we receive with a testing information of a plant or a cannabis product, okay? So I am going to show you in this presentation what we can do with this terpene profile that we can obtain, for example, in our case with the GC-FIT, a gas chromatography method, okay? So, as I'm sure you already know, there are several studies that have demonstrated the effect of terpenes on the endocannabinoid system. One of them, or I think is the oldest, discovered how the beta-caryophyllene, that is a sesquiterpene, is also a cannabinoid because it has some affinity for the CB2 receptors. There are some recent studies that have seen how the combination of certain terpenes with certain cannabinoids produce a synergistic effect, or the sum of effects, activating some specific CB receptors. Okay, for example, Here we have the limonene, that is a monoterpene. It has, of course, these are in vitro studies, but well, they give to us a high level or a good quality information about what could happen in the human body when we take these cannabinoids or terpenes. No? So in that case, the limonene, for example, it has some synergy with the THC, and both activate the CB1 receptor stronger than if they are consumed separately. Okay, but are these really important? Everybody knows that the terpenes has very potential use for the treatment of some pathologies, but are they really important? Why I say this is because well, I mean in an isolated point of view, okay? Because I can say this plant has limonene, is the main terpene in the plant is limonene, and the plant has THC. So because of the study that I have mentioned, so I know that this combination is better than taking THC alone. No? Okay, this is important, but we have to know, or we know, that most of the terpenes that are in the cannabis plant are also in other plants. Okay, so if I want to take the advantages of the limonene with THC, why not to take THC and inhalate limonene from an essential oil, for example, from a citrus plant. Doing it that way, I am going to take the advantages of both products. So, yes, terpenes are important from the medicinal or from the effect in the human body, but cannabis plant is a mix of terpenes, and they are in different quantities, and there are plants that presents different profiles of terpenes, different quantities of terpenes, and it's always a mix of terpenes. We don't have to, we cannot think in the terpenes in cannabis from an isolated point of view. Okay, we cannot say, taking the same example, this plant is high in limonene, so wow, I am going to take it because I know that it has a synergistic effect with the THC. Let's go to the next slide. A recent study that it's called the nose aroma but not THC mediates the subjective effects of smoke and vaporized cannabis flower. What that this study says or discovered? Well, we know that the aroma can be perceived by the consumer as very pleasant or not. Okay, maybe what I like or the profile of terpenes that I like, the aroma that I like, maybe other person not or dislike this kind of aroma. Aroma is very personal. Each person has their own their own preferences. No? So this study what says is that if the aroma was pleasant to the consumer, was pleasant independently of the terpene that are in the plant. If the aroma was pleasant to the consumer, the effects were more pleasant than if the aroma was disliked. regardless of the THC content, okay? Therefore, if we want to provide medicinal cannabis to a patient, it is very important that the aroma of the product is perceived as pleasant to them. And in this, we have to keep in mind, is what I said, that personal tastes play an important role, okay? Aromas that may be pleasant for me, maybe are not pleasant for others, and vice versa. So what we did several years ago was an analysis of terpenes of several plants. As I said, we use the gas chromatography with FID detector, and we can identify and quantify in the lab 21 terpenes. We analyzed the plants, 72 or 76 flowers, and with the terpene profile of each plant, we perform a statistical tool that is called the principal component analysis. This statistical tool, allows to us to first to identify which terpenes have the greatest weight when it comes to grouping or classifying, in that case, the samples, or maybe the plants, and not only which terpene has the greater effect, but this statistic tool allows to us to group in the plants or group in the samples. So we can see in a graph how similar or different are one plant and other plant. Okay. So doing that, applying this statistical tool to the 76 samples, I think. The first that the statistical tool told to us is that the 60% of the variability of the plants are explained based in this group, in this first classification. What is this classification? The plants could be classified in plants that has very, very common terpenes. It means terpenes that usually are always present in the samples, in the plants. These are the common terpenes that I think that everybody knows, like beta-caryophyllene, limonen, myrcen, alpha-umulen, okay? And other plants that contain unusual or not very common terpenes, that are terpenes that are not usually found in all the samples. I can say an example. For example, everybody knows about the THCV or the CBDV, okay, that they are not common cannabinoids. Usually plants don't have high levels of these strange, we can say, cannabinoids, like the CBDV and THCV. Usually plants have THC, CBD, CBG, but there are some cannabinoids that usually don't or are not in high quantities in the plants. Okay, of course we know that now there are several plants in the market that they have high quantities of these varying cannabinoids, but it's not usual. Okay, usually plants, what they contains are is high THC or high CBD, ratio 1:1. Okay, so the first classification that the statistical tool gives to us is a classification that separates the plant between plants with common terpenes and plants that have of course, common terpenes, but also there are other terpenes. I cannot say in big quantities, but they are present that are not usually in all the plants. Okay, for example, camphene, or for example, the trans-othymene, terpinolene, for example. Terpinolene is that terpene that usually gives the odor, the aroma of the haze plants, plant haze, some kind of amnesia plants. This smells like charge, okay? It's a very strong flower that not everybody like this kind of flower, but there are some consumers that really like this odor of terpinolene, okay? Second, the statistical tool told us that the second group, the second classification of the plants can be done between plants that have high quantity levels of myrcene and alpha-pinene and other plants that have high quantities of beta-caryophyllene, alpha-humulene, limonene, or linalool. When I mean high quantities, I mean in a proportion, okay? If you sum all the terpenes, all the terpenes, the quantity of terpenes that are in a plant, there are some terpenes that are in more high quantities than others, okay? In that case, we can say that we can classify the plants between plants that the principal, the most abundant terpene is the myrcene, and the second one is the alpha-pinene, and there are other plants that have as the predominant, as the highest quantity level of terpene, for example, the beta-caryophyllene or alpha-humulene. Okay, this is very very interesting because really several years ago, an study done by Casano and Grassi, they found they didn't did it in that way. What they did is to give to some consumers several plants, and they asked to the consumers if they think that the plant that they are consuming is an indica or as sativa, okay? What they found is that the plants, the samples, the flowers, that not all the people, but most of the people say that the odor, the aroma, reminds them to an indica plant. They found that these plants have myrcene as the high quantity level, and the second one was the alpha-pinene. Okay, so when we know that indica sativa can be explained from several points of view. We can say about the how tall is a plant, or we can say about the origin of a plant. Okay, but talking about a consumer, what a consumer understands or thinks that a plant indica, that an indica plant, how it smells. Usually, these plants are plants with high quantities of myrcene and alpha-pinene. And the third classification, that, well, just the 7% of variability is explained with this third classification, classify the plants in plants that the most abundant terpenes are monoterpenes, especially the limonene, and other plants that the beta-caryophyllene and alpha-humulene, that they are sesquiterpenes, are in higher quantities than other terpenes. Okay? Yeah, well, we have this classification. Maybe we cannot do a lot of things with that. Something interesting is that about the myrcene and alpha-pinene, because it's it's the same that Casano and Grassi found. But well, this is interesting. But what we can do with this classification? Okay, so if we represent the plants in a graph based in this classification, we can see the dots. Okay, the dots are the samples. But I was right; it was 76 samples. The dots are well, dots in that case are squares. Are the plants. So when we represent the plants based in the classification that the statistical tool done, we can see how different or how similar is a plant from other. This we can know it because the plants that are very similar, the dots are very close together. And the plants that are very different, the dots are far away, very far from one point is very far from the other. Okay? Here what we can see is that the plants that are in the left of the graph are plants that have terpenes that are not usually found in all the samples, and in the right we have the plants that usually have only terpenes that are classified as very common terpenes. Also, because in this graph we have represented the first grouping, that is, remember the difference between plants with very common terpenes or plants without these unusual terpenes, and the second grouping, the grouping that classify the plants in high in myrcene and alpha-pinene, and plants that I can remember as it's plants that are high in some sesquiterpenes like beta-caryophyllene, alpha-humulene. So these plants that are rounded are the plants that that have this indica profile. The plants that that have a very high quantities of myrcene, and the second most abundant terpene is the alpha-pinene. Okay, the plants that are at the bottom of the graph, so are plants that don't have myrcene, or if they have in very, very, very small quantities, and they have other terpenes that we will see later, okay? This is important because what we can see in just one view, no? Let me check. Yeah, well, because the first grouping and the second grouping explain more than the 80% of the variability of a plant, okay? So here we can see that there are, at least in the plants that we have analyzed, there is a gap, that is this rounded part of the graph, That means that there are almost no samples that cover the rounded space. This is important, for example, for a company that develops varieties, because this company, for example, should look for plants that fill this gap. Because as a consumer, maybe I like the odor that the plants that should be in this part of the graph is the plant that is the odor, is the aroma that I like most. Okay, so I think that it's important to offer to the patent a broad range of different terpene profiles. In the way that the patent can choose the smell, the odor, the aroma that he prefers. Because we know that a good aroma makes the effect, we can say, stronger or better than a plant with the same quantity of THC, but with an aroma that the patient interprets like dislike, or the aroma dislikes the patient, okay? Well, also we can group the plants, or the second classification and the third classification, and that means that, well, these plants, for example, are plants that principally the most abundant, or the most, the terpene that is in more quantity is the beta-caryophyllene and the alpha-humulene. And here, for example, we have a practical example that can show you how is important, or the reality, at least in Spain, the reality about what kind of plants or what variability of aromas the patents here in Spain they have access. The red dots are plants from a patent association here in Spain, okay? And these plants are used for medicinal purposes. All these plants are rich in THC. Remember that this classification has nothing to do with the cannabinoids, just with the terpene profile. So as we can see in the graph, according to the terpene profile, they are very similar to each other, okay? Because, as I said, they are very close to each other. So in this case, these patents are losing the possibility of benefit from the positive effects that plants with very different terpene profiles could have for each of their pathologies. Well, as conclusions, we can say that it's very important to have a broad database of the terpene profile of different plants to be able to make a more precise classification. More the plants you give to the statistical tool, more representative will be the classification. And that if we want to make various types of cannabis available to the patents, we have to try to cover the broader and more varied spectrum of aromatic profiles, since there will be surely more suitable profiles than others according to the personal preferences of the patent and the pathology that they suffer from. Okay? So, okay, that's all. This is thank you very much for your attention. Well, this is just an example or an application for the terpene testing, or the terpene profile of a cannabis plant or a flower, and how we can take the most how we can use this information of the terpene profile, okay, as a company, of course, usually.
Thank you very much.
You are welcome.
Thank you very much for sharing your data with us. So Iñaki, we're going to try to open for a couple of questions. We're a little bit over time, so we'll take only one or two so that people can also take a break properly. Are there any questions in the room? Specifically? No? Okay, then I'll ask you just one question. Iñaki, since CANNA Foundation is actually arguably one of they have almost the best access, let's say, to the phytochemical testing in Europe, and you're gathering a very vast sample. From your vantage point, do you see that basically we are narrowing the genetic pool that is available in the market, or do we see that there is an increase in diversity? So rather than looking at the static database of a one point in time, if you look at the trend, let's say, where we are going, do we see more diversification or a narrowing in the genetic pool?
No, usually here in Spain, people moves because of hypes. I mean, for example, now a lot of people wants or likes the USA varieties, and this is what everybody is growing and selling and consuming. Okay, because there are no really good information about how terpenes can affect to the patent. Okay, so no, really, of course, this is due to the illegal situation of the patents that wants to consume flowers, because here in Spain, recently we can access, or patent can access to some medication made with cannabis, but not to flowers. So in social clubs or clubs where there are patents, usually they have access to a very few quantity of varieties, and usually these varieties are very, very similar in the odor profile. Okay, because as I said, here people, the growers, the consumers, moves due to the hype that in that moment, the plant or the variety are very, very common or very new or to the market. So recently there are plants, like I said before, with high quantity of terpinolene that practically they disappear. It's very difficult to find plants with high quantity of terpinolene, that kind of haze aroma. In the past, several plants were available, like Jagerer, Amnesia, but recently, usually here in Spain, the most common plants are the USA plants, and well, is the problem of the lack of regulation.
Yeah, thank you. And also, I think from kind of flow genetics perspective, for us it's really important to introduce this genetic diversity to also promote the therapeutic applications that this might unfold, and also the benefits that could be derived for patients. So thank you for showing that information and your data, and I wish you a very nice remainder of your day.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to show you this. And well, me not, because I am in Valencia, but we are in the fair. CANNA Foundation has a small booth in the fair where we can perform cannabinoid, terpene testing for free to visitors. And so if there are someone that are interested, they can visit us in the fair. Okay?
Okay, thank you. And for everybody here, yeah? Do you have one more question? Okay, Iñaki, there's just one more question from the room, and then we'll close so that people can take a break.
Hello. Hi, I wanted to check, is there any research showing that which terpenes have, are beneficial for which kind of medical effects? For example, this terpene is good for pain suppression, or this terpene is good for anxiety. Is there any kind of research showing that?
So,
Iñaki?
Yeah, Gilles, tell me because I can't hear.
Yes, right. So I will quickly repeat it. The question is whether there is existing research related to the relation between terpenes and the therapeutic application and benefits that are derived from there.
If there are some kind of studies, do you mean?
Yeah, exactly.
We are trying to develop some studies with patents, but as I said, the situation here in Spain is very difficult to perform. Well, the situation here in Spain doesn't allow us to perform the studies with the quality that that we want or that we prefer. So yeah, sometimes we thought making that kind of studies, but so far now I think that is very in standby because yeah, as I said, it's difficult. But well, we are trying to develop or to make that kind of studies maybe in a future, because they are really very interesting.
Okay, thank you. All right, everybody, then we'll take a 15-minute break, and then we'll come back with Robin van Velze, who will bring us research specifically on the unique expressions that he found in Bhutan. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.